Hey YouTubers, don't forget to subscribe and follow me on these social media platforms. Enjoy the video. Alright. 3, 2, 1. Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to another relaxed Dragon Ball discussion. I am once again joined by World King Kanji. Man, why don't you say hello to everybody listening?
Hey guys, World King Kanji here, and I'm actually really thrilled to be back here for a change, because I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, I've missed this. I have missed this, and this is a fun discussion.
It is. Actually, I just implore everybody, if you haven't already, but you know, we're all Dragon Ball fans here. If you haven't gone and watched Team 4 Star's list, top 12 fights of Dragon Ball, which we're going to be talking about, you know, like our thoughts, our opinions, some omissions we thought they had, you know, just kind of all in fun. We don't think that they made any real bad choices here, just kind of a more our opinion, you know. But yeah, we don't really talk about Dragon Ball that much anymore, you know. We're all working on our other things and other content. But anyway, let's just jump right into this. Okay, so first and foremost, I just want to start this discussion off, man. Like, I think that there were some pretty glaring omissions, and maybe if the list was longer, you know, they did kind of cut it in half this year. They didn't do 24, they did 12. So maybe that's part of this. But I do think that there are some definitely glaring omissions. Whether you're a fan of the fights or not, you could probably agree, yeah, that probably deserved to be on there a little bit more than one of the other ones, you know? And I'll let you tell yours in a second, but there's one I was thinking. If you watch the list, they only had one fight where it wasn't Goku centric, right? And it definitely deserves to be on there. 17 versus Piccolo, one of the biggest drag out brawls of Dragon Ball Z. Honestly, it's like the last time Piccolo was relevant at all. But if they were going to explore the world of Dragon Ball fights without Goku, that isn't the only unique one and really fun one to watch. Maybe they put too many Buu fights in this list, which they did. I was actually surprised. But I was thinking Goten versus Trunks at the tournament right before everything gets crazy with Buu. Because that fight is about, like, it's actually pretty long in comparison to some of the other ones that they picked. It's like 14-15 minutes long straight, and you have these two characters kind of a return to classic Dragon Ball. They're flying around, there is a lot of strategy there, but they have the powers of a Super Saiyan. They're kind of holding back and refusing to use those powers unless they get into trouble. And there's a lot of homages to the 23rd fight or with Piccolo and Goku with different techniques and stuff. We don't get to see that in Dragon Ball. Like a drag out brawl, start to finish tournament, getting to the final fight that's really interesting, fun, cathartic, and also just incredibly impactful for everyone watching it. It kind of felt, at least to me, watching that as a kid and now watching it as an adult, it's a return to form and everything that I always really wanted from Dragon Ball, but we don't get that a whole lot. What are your thoughts, at least on that fight, and then any other fights you feel like they kind of through to the wayside?
Yeah, so I mean, Goten versus Trunks is a really fun fight, and I think one of the reasons that people tend not to remember it too fondly is because generally, when you think of Dragon Ball and when you think of Dragon Ball Z specifically, you tend to associate the best fights with, and it sounds really bizarre, but you tend to associate the best fights with how bashed up the guys get in it. So, like, you know, how ripped up the clothes get, how bloody the fights are, and, you know, how angry and how much emotion goes into them and stuff. But there is a lot of emotion going into it because you're sort of watching it with, like, you know, Goku and Vegeta and the other members of the Dragon team. And so you're sort of looking down on it and seeing how they've evolved and how far they've come, etc. And now it's their kids doing this kind of thing, and especially coming off of the Cell arc where you had grown-up Trunks in it as well, it is a really fun fight to watch. And I think had maybe they'd done a few more things where they'd ended up getting a bit more, like, you know, tattered clothing or something like that, people would remember it a little bit more, because that tends to be where you wear the battle scars. It shows how much the fight has gone through. And, like, you know, even with like Jackie Chun and Goku at the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai, they both end up getting, like, you know, shredded and stuff. Goku loses his entire clothes. You know, he's completely naked.
Yeah.
And, like, Master Roshi's obviously, you know, he busts out of his top. And so that kind of stuff, you know, it hangs around and you remember that kind of thing. an obvious omission for me, which I can kind of understand why this was omitted for a couple of reasons, but I don't think you can excuse it really from not being there, is, of course, Goku versus Frieza. Now, to me, that is one of, if not the biggest fight in Dragon Ball, and it is quite renowned for being one of the most well done fights, one of the biggest fights in anime history. You know, it's not just in Dragon Ball, but people, when you think about, like, anime showdowns, you think of Goku versus Frieza, because there was no love lost between those two guys. And, you know, they destroy an entire planet in their fight. You know, it is one of the biggest fights that happens in the entire series. Now, I know that, technically speaking, there's not a lot of martial arts that happen in the fight. It's generally a lot of techniques, like Frieza's, you know, the ball. There is really no name for that move other than you might die this time, as it seems to be called in lots of things, but it's where he puts Goku in the ball and then he's bouncing him off all these different things and he's like trying to not make him explode and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of techniques like that, but if we're going to talk about actual brawling, the end when it becomes Super Saiyan Goku versus Final Form and then 100% Final Form Frieza, that is a fight. That is a fight to the death, almost. And if you're going to talk about the animation side of things, because of course a lot of it had Ebisawa and Uchiyama's input in on it, and that was kind of, it made the animation look really kind of ugh at times. But if you look at what they did for Dragon Ball Super when they did the remaster of that fight at the end there, when Trunks was talking about the things that were leading up to the Goku Black arc. Now that you can find it on YouTube if you search it up. It's just search for Goku vs Frieza Uncut and Remastered, and you will see what we mean. There is an amazing amount of detail put into this little fight and exchange, and it is beautiful. And there is, honestly, to me, that deserves credit where credit's due.
You know, the weird thing I thought about their list, and everyone's free for their own opinions. Obviously, Dragon Ball has had some amazing fights across the years, and one of the biggest driving forces for Dragon Ball has always been the tournaments. And to me, that's like that obvious bias in their list. I mean, just going through it, you had all three finals of the tournament in Dragon Ball. All of them great fights, Jackie Chun, Ten Shenhan, and Piccolo. And then you also had Goku versus Cell, and the last fight was Super. That's 5 out of 12, right? So, I mean, it's weird to me that they would give the Cell versus Goku fight, as cool as that was, over something like the Frieza fight or something like that. Like, it's not a tournament, but as you said, there's world-ending conflict with that fight to the death. They're neither of them are going to leave this planet, right? Like, it's, you have to fight, you have to beat him because he's insulted you, he's killed your friends, he's done all of the stuff that he has to. At that point, Frieza is a villain, and we as an audience absolutely despise him. Yes, it takes several hours to get there, and maybe that's one of the biggest flaws in that fight, is even though it's a drag out brawl, it does feel, at least in the original anime side, that it's just taking way too long. Like, it might be better served just to, you know, step back, cut this down, or not really include it in a fight like this. I guess I understand that, but I agree. Frieza being a part of all this, not being on this list, was a glaring omission. Okay, I want you to explain to me, because I think you and I would probably have a different opinion. We haven't really discussed this one way or the other, but Vegeta versus Recoome, the entire Ginyu Force, part of me understands why they put this on the list. It's a unique fight, and as they said in their video, we don't get a lot of group fights in Dragon Ball. And even though they were counting that as a group fight, even though, as they even said in that video, okay, you have Gohan and Krillin coming in at the very end, and they get completely plowed by Recoome. He is just leagues and bounds above them, so it's mostly just the Vegeta and Recoome fight that is actually pretty epic in a way. But they count that as a group fight. Then they use the Goku versus Kid Buu fight. They don't count that as a group fight, even though I would put it much higher on the list, even though it was pretty high, just because of how much goes into that fight. You have Goku, Vegeta, Mr. Satan, Fat Buu, everybody giving energy to the Spirit Bomb. It's a drag out brawl. That's another one. It's like, we have to win here or it's all going over. Of course, the tension is cut a lot when they decide not to fuse, which, I mean, works for Dragon Ball, but at the same time doesn't work logically, and one of the reasons I think a lot of people don't like that fight. But the original question stands. Why? I mean, can you explain?
Well,
even though it is a good fight, the Recoome fight, like, why is that on there? Does it deserve to be on there in your opinion?
Obviously, I mean, like, I think personally, I'm quite biased towards that fight, which is why I can see that you've directed this question towards me, because I absolutely adore the Recoome versus Vegeta fight, and the reasons that I do is because there is a massive ode of hopelessness that goes out throughout it, but until that point in the series, Vegeta is one of the scariest people we know, because he's the guy that we've just experienced doing all these horrific things in the previous arc, and then he's literally slaughtering the Namekians trying to get Dragon Balls in this arc. And then they have no choice but to have Gohan and Krillin, who are obviously a lot weaker than Vegeta, side with him to be able to fight these guys. Now, at that point, you've already got the awesome sort of, oh my god, Vegeta's on our side kind of thing. That feeling that goes on alongside of it. But you also have the feeling of, oh my god, not even Vegeta can beat these guys. But Vegeta's trying, and Vegeta's doing these crazy moves, which are all like, you know, badass and stuff. So he's like doing this, that thing that isn't the Final Flash, but looks like the Final Flash, and he's sort of doing it to Recoome, and he's like blowing away all of his armor and all this kind of stuff, but Vegeta's still trying to kick the crap out of him, and he's like, it's brilliant. It's wonderfully animated by Ide and Maeda as well, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's just some of the things that are going on in that fight are just wonderful. The choreography, the martial arts that actually happens in it, with, like, you know, throwing Vegeta's, like, you know, kneeing him in the stomach and everything, and he's like swinging him around by his arms and then chasing around from him, trying to escape from him at the same time as, like, hitting him down to the ground and then jumping into that final flash-like thing. And it's beautiful. It's just brilliant. It's well done. You've got Gohan and Krillin, where you know that Vegeta doesn't want them to interfere, but it all just comes together so well. It's not too much. The fight doesn't last too long, and it's just the right amount of hopelessness and hope that go into the entire thing to make it exciting. I don't know, man. I get goosebumps when I watch that fight. And if we're going past the Vegeta bit, then, you know, all you have to say is the fact that Recoome breaks Gohan's neck, and that just kind of, I mean, he's a kid. It's brutal.
They agree, you know, they kind of agree with my biggest criticism about that fight is it's just kind of holding place until Goku gets there, and as soon as he does, he makes quick work of the Ginyu Force. Before that happened, it's like, oh, these guys, at least in my opinion, and on every single rewatches, and these guys are just going to be pointless, right? Like, there's going to be one decent fight, and there's going to be a couple characters I want to see fight and use their ability. I mean, you have Birder. I will never forgive them for Birder.
Yeah.
Not only does he look awesome, but he keeps saying he's like the fastest
in the
universe.
Even though I work for Frieza.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's like, oh man, I really want to see how that works into, like, the plot, and it never really does. I mean, as soon as Goku goes in there, he's faster than him, and then it's just over before it even begins. And it's like, okay, I get it. But because of their monumental pointlessness in the overall story, it's like, okay, that's one of the reasons I probably can't get behind that fight. Of course, part of me agrees with you. I understand why that's on the list, but for me, that's the one I probably would have taken off the list again. In another note, one of the things they keep talking about, and I think it's worth mentioning, is there any fight from GT or another fight from Super that you would have put in? Because everyone could talk for days about Dragon Ball Z or even Dragon Ball and stuff that they've completely omitted, but they didn't add anything from GT, which, you know, off the top of my head, I can't really say one way or the other whether I think it would be interesting to see a GT fight, or can we consider a GT fight among the best. They're pretty, even though they were trying to recapture Z, at that point it was all about strength and all about beams and all about,
yeah, there was very little martial arts in GT. There was very little actual choreography of the moves. It was all just Kamehameha and then giving them sort of handicaps, like Goku being caused blindness by the ice burn and all that kind of stuff. You know, there were some really cool things, like Omega Shenron sort of impaling Vegeta with all of the spikes on his back and using Dragon Thunder and all these kind of things. There was a lot of cool things that happen in GT. Not to mention, of course, you know, Baby, Super Baby, as it were. He does some incredible moves, and they all look great, and the character design is fantastic. The story is good. But the fights are very bland. There's not a whole lot to them. It's just kind of, I'm going to hide around this corner, fire off a Kamehameha, and then Baby's going to slam a fist down towards me, and I'll move out the way, and then I'll run up his arm and try and do it again, sort of thing. And then I'm going to be hurt and get everyone to power me back up so I can do it again. It's just Kamehamehas after Kamehamehas. There's not a whole lot of exciting stuff in GT. So before I talk about fights from Super that I'd like to have appeared on this list that I'm surprised are not on there, are there any comments you want to make about the GT fights?
Man, okay, so, you know, I'm not really sure. I feel like Omega Shenron has to be the closest, and only because, as I've said in other videos, there's a lot of stuff that happens in GT that are moments. Not the fights, not anything else like that, but character moments that are so heart-swelling that it kind of makes you wonder why the fan base hates it so much. And I'm not talking about like, oh, Goku. I mean, the whole last Spirit Bomb thing with Goku and leaving with Shenron is just amazing, iconic, and it leaves so many questions. The ending of Dragon Ball GT is phenomenal. And then you also have Vegeta kind of saying he's already lost one home, kind of solidifying himself as an Earthling and willing to die for Earth and allow everyone to escape, but they all go with him. And then you also have 18 being the catalyst of destroying Super 17. I mean, there's a lot of good moments, but fights, I wouldn't really put anything there. Just, first of all, when it comes to GT, they're all too short. Like, all the fights are too short. Even the longest ones, like Baby, like you said, it kind of devolves into Goku waiting to get okay again, healing up a little bit, and then shooting off a beam and then being completely crushed and having to come back, you know? So it doesn't really work for me in that. So I don't think I would add anything from GT. Suffice it to say that GT does deserve recognition, if only for the nostalgic and awesome character moments that it gives throughout. And it's not just the characters I mentioned, it's almost everyone gets an awesome moment in that whole series, and it's a lot to go through for that, but for any real fan of the series, they need to watch it if they haven't already. But Super.
Yeah, with Super, now, there is one thing that I would have replaced Vegeta vs. Recoome with, which is something that I don't say very often because I love Vegeta vs. Recoome. But looking at the list, I can understand why they have the fights that they have, and I can understand the placement for the most part. The one thing that I do think I could have replaced Vegeta vs. Recoome, or Janemba at this point, really. And the reason I picked Vegeta vs. Recoome to be replaced in this list is because, for me, Vegeta vs. Recoome is great, but it is short, and it's filled with spots, as they would say in the wrestling industry. It's got moments that are set up throughout the fight which make you go, no way! But there is also another fight in Super that did that, which was Goku vs. Kefla. Now, Goku vs. Kefla, you know, it was a fun fight. It went and it built and it built and it built, and my God, was the payoff worth it. That thing when Kefla started firing off the red lightning, and then Goku's like evading the beams with Ultra Instinct and stuff and trying to keep his concentration, but he's only got enough energy left in him for one last Kamehameha, so if he doesn't finish it like this, then Kefla's going to eliminate him. And then he does the thing where he slides up the beam and blasts the Kamehameha in her face off the stage. Now, there wasn't a Dragon Ball fan among any of you that didn't mark out when that happened. I have cameras installed in all of your houses, and I saw everybody go, what the oh my God! You know, like, everybody freaked out for that, and it was amazing. And that alone, just for the last portion of that fight, I could have replaced Vegeta vs. Recoome for that. Now, the only thing that's quite sad about that is the fact that, you know, that fight and Piccolo vs. 17 are the only two that don't involve Goku particularly, and that's only because Goku turns up to, you know, beat Recoome at the end. But it's just, I forgive it because it's such a beautifully animated done. The choreography is fantastic for it, and the idea is brilliant. But
and it really is it really does allow us to understand like what this new form or new technique is, right? Like they keep hinting at it. We get to see ideas from it, and it's like, okay, this is what it's capable of, something that we've never seen before, something incredibly beautiful. I get it, but I'm gonna go, okay, this might be a little bit controversial. I understand when it comes to Super, the only one I'm going to be talking about here, because we're going to wrap it up here soon. I'm going to say Goku versus Hit round 1. And I only say this for one specific reason, is that this was the first fight and the first thing that Dragon Ball Super did to distinguish itself, to make it known that this series was going to be its own thing and how it was going to handle all of its fights going forward. And it really did. Like Goku's power up, like the whole Kaioken with Super Saiyan Blue became such a staple for his character throughout the whole series at that point. But we got to see Goku push himself to a physical limit that we hadn't gotten to see Goku do for a very long time. I mean, the thing could have killed him. It had some aftermath to it, you know, even though they completely forgot about that in a really interesting way. But the thing is it was quick. It was kind of like, these are what super fights are going to be. They're not going to be long drag out brawls. They're going to be quick. They're going to be stylistic, and we're going to see Goku speed through time. I mean, that in and of itself is a huge achievement for him. And I would imagine for most people, myself included, when you watch that fight for the first time, you're like, what the hell is going on? You know, like Goku is putting all of this stuff together, and then after Hit's been dominating him and Vegeta this entire time, Goku just speeds and punches him, and he can't see it coming. The guy who could stop time. That's an epic moment.
Yeah, and also, to be honest, same arc. You can't go without mentioning how fun Vegeta versus Vegeta was. Because that was a really interesting fight, because it kind of took Dragon Ball back to its roots in many ways, of having the sort of technique and the fact that Vegeta had these abilities where he could heat up the area around him, which was distracting Vegeta. He couldn't lift him up because he was so heavy, and he was being forced into the corners and all this kind of thing. And it was actually really entertaining. Never mind the fact that Vegeta almost gets eliminated and survives by standing on one piece of ring rubble. You know, all that kind of stuff was really fun. It was very typical Dragon Ball, but it was fun. And then him firing off the final flash and all this kind of stuff, and it not working properly, it was like pushing him far enough back, but then Vegeta's sort of like angry and he has to insult him. It's just, it was very fun. It was very Dragon Ball, with the Dragon Ball Z hint and twist in it, and that made it really exciting. I was shaking whilst I was watching Vegeta versus Vegeta, if I remember correctly. I was really excited. I was like really kind of like enjoying it. Like, I know it sounds stupid. I was like, because I was like 23 or whatever when it was happening, but I was sort of there kind of going, oh my god, this is awesome. But I was actually really enjoying it. And you know, I don't feel like I can, 12 isn't enough to pick out your favorite Dragon Ball fights, and I think that is the ultimate point we're really boiling down to when we're talking about this. Because of course, I mean, you know, Goku Black and Zamasu versus like Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks and stuff, that was all really fun when they're like, before it becomes merged Zamasu and they're all fighting around the city and all this kind of stuff, and Vegeta's been impaled and it turns out to just be Goku and Trunks, and they're fighting side by side, which is something they never really got to do in Dragon Ball Z, because of course Trunks was really just fighting with Vegeta. So it was nice to see that twist, and the whole fact that Zamasu was immortal and Goku Black could be damaged, but because he was so strong it was very difficult. It was all really exciting stuff, and it was well thought out, it was well animated, and it was entertaining. So it's really difficult to pick out 12 fights, really.
I know, you can't really judge one way or the other, and that's what we started this with, is like, it's all just opinion. We're just going to throw out stuff that we would have considered for the most part. But anyway, I think we're going to end it there. I hope everyone has enjoyed the video. Thank you so much, Kanji, for coming out and hanging out, doing this discussion. We're gonna talk later. We have so many other ideas, guys, and it's gonna be a really good year. I hope everyone's having a fantastic day. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Go down to the description section, hit that link, and go subscribe to Kanji. And if you're down with talking about Dragon Ball, especially just easier discussions with both of us, go check us out on Twitter. We're always over there, and it's so much easier to have a conversation. Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. As I said, thanks for coming around.
No worries, man. Thanks for having me. It's been fun doing this thing, dude. It always is.
All right. Yeah, it is. It is. All right, guys.
Bye.
Bye.